Want to unmute me, please?
You're on.
I still have a mute symbol on my
That's okay.
Screen.
You have a microphone on your desk.
All right. This is Stan Rasmussen, Chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. Welcome. We have a quorum tonight, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting. First item of business is our housekeeping items. Kathy, since we have a hybrid meeting with people on Zoom and here in person, can you kind of review our ground rules?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Richardson, the Sustainability Director. Just sharing a few housekeeping items for tonight's Zoom meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. All board members, please keep your video on, and all others keep your video off unless you are participating during the meeting. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And just a reminder, there is another board meeting tonight, so we do ask that this meeting wrap up by 7:15 p.m. And I'll turn it back to Stan, but I did want to just give one bit of update for the Sustainability Advisory Board that we usually do at the very beginning. Is the mayor did appoint an additional member to the Sustainability Advisory Board, and the commission voted on that last night. So the confirmation to the citizen went out this afternoon, and as you can tell, that's extremely short notice for somebody to attend a meeting just a few hours later. But it is Catherine Morse is the new board member, and I did send the link to the Zoom meeting to her. But next meeting, we can do the introductions. Or so.
That sounds like a good plan. All right, the next item on our agenda is to approve our minutes from August 9th. I don't know if you had a chance to review those. They kind of reflect our conversation with Vice Mayor Littlejohn, that we had a staff report, and summarizes who else spoke for the subcommittees.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy motions to approve. Kay, you going to second?
Second. Yes.
I have sorry, I don't know if you do that before or after. I have an ask for the minutes, and Kathy, sorry, it makes a little more work for you. But the staff report, that we have the staff report, you know, that's often one of the most important bits of information that we get. Is there a way that whatever your bulleted list of what you give us reports on could be included as parts of the minutes? As it doesn't necessarily need to be done for this one. I'm fine with approving that, but in the that we got a staff report is usually what's on the minutes. But past times when there's more complex things that you're talking to us about or asking of us, those are actually detailed. And so if we can just have received staff report on X, Y, and Z, that would be, I think, super helpful for me when I'm reviewing it, but maybe for the public too, to know what was in the staff report.
Sure, and I can definitely put maybe a little bit more to it. I will mention that these minutes are to cover action items.
Okay.
So that's why they don't have a whole lot of content to there if it wasn't an item of action. I can put a few words in there, but they're not minutes that reflect all that was the conversation of the meeting.
Sure, yeah, I'm not looking for the whole conversation, just like what the topics were, like in 3 or 4 sentences. I realize those aren't actions, but they're probably really germane to the business of the meeting and what the SAB is doing. So like the public can see like what are we actually like discussing, even if it's not like what the discussion was.
I do know also, it's been a topic of discussion with maybe other boards or commissions of more detailed minutes, and I do know that the city clerk is looking at like transcript of minutes as well. especially for the city commission. I don't know if that will trickle down to other advisory boards and commissions, but certainly can look at that too, if somebody wants to go back and really,
Sure.
get the full understanding. But these are just a summary of actions is really what the minutes reflect, which, again, the action is receiving the report. But I can add a little bit more. I just don't want anyone to be disappointed.
Sure. I mean, they can go watch the YouTube.
The intent of what these minutes are supposed to be for.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, I think I like that suggestion. If there were some bullets, just a few bullets of the topics. We don't need a lot of detail or transcription, but some
Yep.
bullets would be helpful. All right, I appreciate that suggestion from Ben. We have a motion to approve the minutes and a second. All those in
Looks like
favor?
somebody
Oh,
has
we
their
have
hand
another.
On.
Oh, Don, I didn't see your hand up. I'm sorry. Don, please.
I'm sorry. I will approve these minutes. I just wanted to make note before we move on that the public comment section just says that we received public comment. And so other than the YouTube records, we're not really kind of keeping track. And I think that we should just be mindful during public comment that if we want to add something to our future agenda items, not that we have to commit to it the next meeting, but just to make sure that we're capturing public sentiment where we feel it's needed.
Just
That I can second.
Just a comment on that too, and this is maybe the area where it's been brought up that the city minutes from some boards and commissions, just, again, the action was they received public comment and it kind of stops at that. And that's what's been communicated. If somebody wants to know who exactly spoke and what it was that they said, then we're getting into that conversation of the transcript of the meeting. And I don't know if that's going to be available, but I can ask and report back next month if that's going to be available to advisory boards as well. So somebody could go back and see a transcript to see which public comment was received and on what topics and what, the summary of those were.
Anything else, Don?
No, understood, Kathy. I'm just more for the benefit of this group that if we think that something's important enough that we need to capture it in our, in the future agenda item, that we should just be mindful of that. Thank you. And if we don't have a second yet, I'll second.
Oh, we have a second, thank you. Kay, you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to say I made the second.
Yep, we got that. Okay, we've had a motion to approve the minutes in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign.
Aye.
Was that an opposed or just a late approval?
Late aye, I think.
Okay, a late approval, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the staff reports. Kathy, you have a few things for us tonight.
I do have a few things, and as I go through some items, I will, I know one particular item I do want Ben to maybe step in with a little bit more information on a question he had asked of staff with some bike lanes. And then I also wanted to point out, looks like Jamie and Kim are on the Zoom tonight. So hopefully I don't miss anything, but please speak up if I do miss something in my update. I'm going to be updating on some of the county-led projects as well. And if there's any questions on climate action and adaptation plan, Jamie's on the call and can answer some of those questions. But let me just go through the list. Stop me if you have some questions before I move on to the next item. First thing I wanted to mention, just as an FYI to the board, that I will be out at a conference the last week in September, the 25th through the 29th. And then that's for Greenbuild NDC, and then also a conference in October on the 3rd through the 5th. And I'm presenting at that conference. That one's a state conference. But I will want to coordinate with Stan and Ben on the agenda for the October meeting prior to these conferences. Hopefully we can get that done so it can get posted in time, since I'll be out those 2 weeks. The other item I wanted to mention is we've been talking for a while of the Sustainability Advisory Board members' interest in touring some of our city facilities. And the first one that there was interest in was a tour of our water treatment and wastewater treatment plants. And I did send out an email to figure out some availability for you all. And it looks like Monday, October the 9th at 8:30 a.m. Works for almost all the board. Again, the plan is for 2 to 3 hours. This is a tour. City staff will be there to answer questions. This is not a advisory board meeting or a discussion for any business items. This is strictly a tour of city facilities. And I will email you whether we're going to start at the water treatment or the wastewater treatment plant as we get closer to the date and I get confirmation from Trevor and his staff. After that, I know there was interest in touring the household hazardous waste facility and the compost facility. So that will be scheduled after this tour, and I'll send you some dates, kind of like I did with this first tour opportunity. Any questions on the tours of those facilities? And please also let me know if there are other facilities you would like to tour as well. So work is progressing in a lot of areas for sustainability for the city within the Sustainable Capital Projects policy and the guidelines we're drafting, as well as the Lead for Cities and the certification process that we're starting. KPIs within the strategic plan. We had a great conversation just recently of the KPI that deals with the energy code and just trying to figure out ways for maybe some better measurement of energy efficiency within our facilities. Also, a lot of conversation on kind of EV charging plans for this community and maybe just larger than Lawrence, really covering the MPO area. We've had some conversations with the MPO on this being a project for 2024. So some work and a lot of community conversations will come about at that time. The stuff to really be focused on, and I want to make sure all the Sustainability Advisory Board members are aware. I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I'm going to mention it again. This fall, there's a lot of sustainability type of plans or opportunities to really provide feedback and get involved. So starting with this month, it's still planned on the county side to release the county's GHG inventory. So my understanding is the report is almost at a final stage, and that will be provided or will be information to the public. The city has started its process to update our GHG inventory using 2021 as the year for our data. 2021 is also the year for the county-wide GHG inventory. The county just completed its first GHG inventory with the 2021 data. The city of Lawrence has had several GHG inventories, but there has not been an update for quite some years. So we're getting ready to update that. That is tied to our certification process for Lead for Cities. So we do need to have a GHG inventory update that's within 5 years of the certification year when we submit the application. So we've started that with ICLEI, and I'll keep updating you on when we're able to kind of wrap that up. It'll probably be beginning of next year.
Do you want to bring in Kim at this time?
Yeah.
Or do you want to?
I did notice that Kim turned on her video, so if she has something to share about the GHG inventory. I do have some other county items I was going to go through too, but Kim, if you have any information on the GHG inventory.
No, I honestly didn't have anything to add. I just wanted to be visible, so you know I was here in case there are questions. So you can continue through the list, Kathy, and yeah, I'm here to just listen, but be part of the conversation whenever it makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kim and Jamie. Yeah. Also, October, we had mentioned Land Development Code update with Module 2. That's what the consultants had told us a month ago. I don't know if it's still sticking to that same schedule, but that was what we had heard, where Module 2 will be released for the public meetings and engagement. And Kay, you might have more information on that. I don't know if the steering committee has had a meeting recently, but I do know that Module 2 is where they told us a lot of the sustainability items will be embedded or part of Module 2. Around that same time in October timeframe is when the open space is going to have additional public meetings to kind of release some of the information that's been captured so far with the community engagement and the work that they're doing. Please know that the actual open space plan is not going to be released to the public. It sounds like closer to December timeframe, but there is going to be some public engagement on the open space plan in October. And then November is when I hear from the county that the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, the draft, will be released to the public. So currently, Jamie is going, she's been receiving a lot of feedback from the staff advisors group as well as the steering committee of the Climate Action Plan. And she's kind of going through all that feedback, incorporating, and my understanding is that there will be a draft for the staff group and the steering committee group to review a new draft or a revised draft for the committee to review at the end of next week. And again, we'll continue to work on that until it's ready for launch to the public in November. So those were kind of my timeline updates, just pausing, making sure there's no questions.
Kathy, can I get some clarification on the first one that you mentioned about reviewing among city staff the KPIs around the energy efficiency goals and EV charging plans for the county or for the city and the broader community?
Sure.
So can you talk, maybe not specifically about what you guys are talking about, but what you see or what the staff sees as the Sustainability Advisory Board's representation in those conversations? At what stage? Are we just an engaged group of the public once public engagement starts, or do you see a role, especially given some of the expertise we have on SAB, for us to, contribute to those conversations about how best to achieve those goals?
That is a great question, Ben, and really kind of an area where I always want to make sure, that Sustainability Advisory Board feels connected to the strategic plan. There's a very direct correlation between this group and what we're doing with the strategic plan under the environmental sustainability commitment. And I'm certainly happy to even share what the conversation was with the energy code. I don't have the strategic plan up, but I can look it up really quick. The way that the Sustainability Advisory Board can connect or have discussions with us. I always, anyone who wants to call me and talk about the KPIs under environmental sustainability, please do. But one of the things that we're looking at, all the commitments and some of the outcomes have started the process of reviewing the language around the KPIs.
Okay.
Some of the KPIs still don't have any data source. Some of them, there's a struggle with targets. What should a target be? And as I had mentioned, when we applied for Lead for Cities, we wanted that to be something that goes hand in hand with our strategic plan.
Okay.
So Lead for Cities also has some metrics to it, and some of them are already what was incorporated in our strategic plan. Others are not, but we're looking at Lead for Cities to see if there's something there that can be replace maybe the way we're measuring something, or maybe what we're measuring, what it says in the strategic plan is not meaningful information, and we want something that is.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the, and I'm still trying to get on here, just a second. When it comes to the KPI under strong welcoming neighborhoods, by the way, this is a very welcomed pause, so thank you for getting this one asked. Okay, so the KPI under strong welcoming neighborhoods talks about the percent of commercial units, all construction above or at energy code.
Okay.
And by the way, it was divided between commercial units, industrial units, and residential units. So it's the percent of them that are above or at the energy code. So really what data we have is how many commercial units, industrial units, and residential units got built after the energy code was established and adopted,
Okay.
right? And that's what it's currently showing as data. So in a way, we're asking the question, I mean, is this really environmental sustainability in the sense of all it's measuring is who was built before 2008 and who was built after 2008, right? And the numbers are only moving because more construction's happening. But there's not a true measurement of energy efficiency in those three categories. So if any of you, and some of you, this is your area of expertise, can think of a different way that we can measure what, and you can see under strategy, it says identify energy efficiency opportunities for residential, industrial, and commercial buildings. So that's what we wanted to achieve. Mm-hmm. It's just the way that we're measuring is really just a number of buildings constructed before or after the energy code was adopted. So, any other questions around that? Looks like Don has a question.
Go ahead, Don.
So I guess this is maybe a request for future staff reports, because as you go through these items, I find myself curious, like which city departments, which staff are working on this with you, just to kind of, I don't know, have a sense of, where this stuff is being worked on. And so maybe in future reports, if you could, like, for example, I wonder who's working on the greenhouse gas inventory. And, maybe this is obvious and I should know it. It's somewhere online or something. But I guess it would just be helpful to know. And I'm also just curious if you are working in any other the city boards right now that you regularly go to, that so we know we're kind of being represented on those boards. So that's kind of a request and maybe a little bit of a question.
Sure. GHG inventory for the city, we are a sustainability department of one, so you're looking at the person who's working on that update with the help of ICLEI and our membership, so really taking advantage of the 10 hours that we get through our membership for them to assist and audit the numbers that we collect. And the report will be our City of Lawrence report will be a staff report. I do know that the county is working with ICLEI for them they have a template type of report that is being provided, and that's through a quoted work project that they had. So when it comes to, when I talk about the strategic plan, and I think we've mentioned this before, I know the group has been very interested in, the actual departments to be called out on the city's website. The idea behind it is to break down those silos, But when we are talking about strong welcoming neighborhoods, generally we're talking about the planning department. So as I mentioned, I had met with the planning department to discuss this KPI in particular. I can talk for hours, I promise you. I could be here for 3 hours providing you, like, a lot of the stuff we're working on is just so cool. You all need to tell me where you want more information. Like Ben just paused and said, hey, let's talk a little bit more about that, you know, and I'm happy to talk about a lot more about that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of go through a quick list of updates because I don't want to take up all your meeting time for sure. I don't want to do that, but please know that I would be very excited to talk about all the projects in detail for sure. Okay.
That one that you brought up is super surprising to me. I mean, especially if we're not building houses as quickly as we are in Lawrence, we're not going to achieve our goals based on the metric, right? And it doesn't incorporate any of the, you know, any of the solar that's getting installed or any of the retrofits on any of the East Lawrence or Old West Lawrence or any of the houses in town, but there's definitely concentrations of houses in town that might be much more efficient than they were before 2008, but they won't be represented at all in that data.
Nope.
Does LEED give any kind of suggestion? Sorry, we should talk about this outside of this meeting, but that's cool.
Yeah,
I think that
we can definitely focus in on this. It may be another meeting where, you know, I focus in on just this one item or two items, because I do have a lot of other items that I wanted to report on. But you'll notice too on the website, this one does not have like an actual target, because it's just reporting numbers of what was built after that adoption of the energy code. But I do appreciate the question. So,
Wait. I don't know if anybody else has a question, but I do. On the strategic plan, it used to be real easy to find on the city's website. There was a link on the homepage. How do you find it now?
I just found it on the homepage.
Where?
It's one of the featured slides. From time to time, depending if there's a holiday, some of the featured slides change to like holiday service, you know, modifications or something, but they've changed it back to strategic plan from the city's homepage. Are you not seeing that now?
Oh, okay. I have the wrong page pulled up.
Okay.
I have that's strange. I have an old one, I guess, pulled up.
And if you go to the city's
Yeah, if you look at
sustainability.
Lawrence, Kansas, or lawrencekas.org, it's right there on top. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no,
weird.
no problem. Yeah, that's a good question as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I have my hand up.
Okay,
This is
go ahead.
Kay.
Yes.
This is Kay Johnson, SAB board member. I specifically asked in advance of the meeting that we have a discussion tonight about the KPIs. And I know we've had a long discussion now, Kathy, from you, but I wanted it to be on the agenda. And I hope that we can actually talk about the KPIs, not only the ones and the goals that we set, but also in detail about the KPIs that were set for sustainability, because the Sustainability Advisory Board was not asked to comment on these before they got finalized. And I even talked to Jasmine about that before she left. So I don't feel they are very good, and that's in general.
Thanks for that comment. And I also will mention, when I said that we're looking at some of these for potential rewording or a different measurement, please know that these are initial staff conversations. We cannot change KPIs ourselves, so only the commission can. So the process really is, if we look at some different language or measurement that's within our lead for cities that we'd like to bring into the strategic plan, we would talk to this board about what those changes would be under environmental sustainability KPIs, and see if you're, kind of in agreement with what those are. And then we would present to the city commission. Now they can agree to update them or stick to the ones that we've got. So it's really up to the city commission on whether or not the KPIs change. But please send me suggestions. If you have one that you want to discuss with me, do that. If you'd like, the board to discuss it at a board meeting, absolutely have that conversation with Stan. All right.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, first of all, I want to apologize because Kay sent us both an email, and I didn't remember that when we set the agenda. But I do think that there's value in what she's talking about. We can't go through all the KPIs in one of our board meetings, but there is an explicit role for SAB in advising on those things. I mean, that's what 8101 that created the SAB was supposed to do, is we're supposed to provide that kind of support to staff and city commission. And I know that staff can't change what the KPI is, but if we're working together between staff and SAB, we can make recommendations to city commission that we think these should be the changes to the KPI. And I think that, along with staff also agreeing on that, is going to be much more powerful to city commission that, these are the, when we're trying to go towards this goal, should be the metrics that we use, or this should be the approaches that we have towards it. So it seems to me that what Kay's talking about is almost a thing that we'd have to let's isolate 3 KPIs we're going to talk about next meeting or something like that. You know what I mean? I don't know, especially when you're a department of one, outsourcing a little bit of that discussion or that research, especially, there's some people on the board that have a lot more expertise than I do, certainly, on some of these.
Yeah, and I will say that some departments, some outcomes and commitments have already gotten KPIs changed or some wording changed.
Okay.
So it's usually the champion of the outcome or the champion of the commitment that drafts the memo to commission, but certainly having that backing with the advisory board would be helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before I move on?
I don't see any hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, just really quick, Solar for All grant opportunity. So I had initially sent the board a message about a letter for support, and it looks like AHAB had their meeting on Monday and had their letter of support on there for the county as lead on the grant proposal for Solar for All. And at this time, the county is not going to proceed with the application or the proposal for this grant. So we've had a lot of conversations between the city and the county on the Solar for All. I think just to kind of summarize a couple things. Number one is staff capacity in terms of all the work that is currently prioritized. Again, prioritized meaning the climate action and adaptation plan. It's a priority to get that draft completed into the public this year and get that process moving along. The open space plan as well, and a few other priority items. So just staff capacity and understanding what the workload is right now. Also, something that we kind of realized at the beginning, but it really hit us a little bit more, was just the size of the funding that comes with Solar for All. Is a pretty big amount of money and a lot of responsibility there. It's better suited for just a larger area, larger reach. So in addition to Douglas County, I know that submitted a NOI a while back, and it looks like Dodge City also from Kansas. But the other applicant, or the one that is going to proceed with an application, is the state of Kansas. And we have had some conversations with the state of Kansas on their proposal. We do want to kind of divert our attention, and instead of just our smaller area, county area application to more of that statewide approach. And we do want to provide them a letter of support. I think it will come more from kind of one letter from county and city touching on, affordable housing and then the sustainability side of things. They did say they would very much appreciate a letter of support. And just so you know, the amount of money that the state of Kansas is in for in the kind of that small, the smaller range is actually $70 million. So that's what kind of they're going to look for. And this is for rooftop solar for low income. And they hope, they don't know for sure, but they hope that they're going to be able to provide the rooftop solar at no cost to the homeowner. But again, the application is due in October, so there's a lot of conversations happening in Kansas with Solar for All. Just won't be at the local level right now, but we would be looking to apply for the state funds if the state is awarded the $70 million. Any questions on that? Okay. Bike lanes, there was some concerns and questions that were raised by board member Ben, had a lot of conversations, I think, with a few folks. The only thing I will say, I will give it to Ben for kind of a update on what the concerns were and what the conversation was there. But I will remind this board, the Sustainability Advisory Board in the past has had some joint meetings with other advisory boards or commissions. I know that the Sustainability Advisory Board already has representation on a lot of boards, but there are some that you do not. And if you ever wanted to, if you had an agenda item that you ever wanted to discuss with like the Multimodal Transportation Commission or AHAB, the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, or any others like that, just let me know how I can help coordinate a meeting like that between two boards. Would talk to the staff liaison of the other group, and just let me know what those items are that you would like to discuss, because there's opportunity there, as you know. I think Dawn had just asked earlier, like, which boards and commissions do I attend? I do based on topic. I look at agendas, and there are times where I just jump into meetings knowing what the agenda is. And sometimes I'm on the agenda of those boards and commissions, so I have a part or a piece in those as well. But just let me know, and I'm going to turn it over to Ben to inform the advisory board.
There was the construction that's going on at 21st and Iowa. Is getting close to complete. I know, much to many people's chagrin that have to travel south there, has been slowed down for a long time. And I bike up the bike boulevard to go over to West Campus. They're doing a ton of construction over there, and I was just curious about, I was kind of frustrated actually that there wasn't going to be bike lanes that basically connected the bike boulevard, I thought, all the way over to West Campus, which there's a new light going in there. And so I didn't know if that was a sustainability advisory board thing when we're talking about bike lanes. And so I'll say that the response overall has been really good, and that I got a really good education about a lot of things. So the Multimodal Transportation Commission is probably the people that would do that. If anybody saw the Journal World, that they just gave out almost $300,000 for bike lane improvements. I learned that the Bike Boulevard doesn't go all the way to 21st Street, that it turns right at Ousdall and turns into the Central District for KU, and that KU has a pretty extensive plan to have basically bike and pedestrian trails throughout campus that would get you all the way from West Campus all the way to where the new stadium stuff would be. And so I'll probably still be a little frustrated that I can't bike straight across 21st Street. And if you're coming down the hill at Iowa and you have to stop for a bike or a pedestrian that's pressed the button at the light, it might be me, so don't throw anything. But I guess in general, I was just looking for how are the decisions made for when we incorporate sustainability into crossings, and it seemed like kind of a no-brainer to me that we would incorporate it there, since it's at the end of the bike. It's the bike boulevard connecting to West Campus in my mind. And I guess after talking with city staff that Kathy connected me with and talking to people at KU, I understood a little bit more about why it wasn't done that way.
Thank you, Ben.
That's as short as I can make it, I think.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, the next item is solar readiness recommendations from the Sustainability Advisory Board. Kay brought this up a few meetings ago, and then again last meeting, of where those recommendations landed. The Sustainability Advisory Board did vote and approved the recommendations to go to the City Commission at their meeting on March of 2020. And I did search to see when it would have then gone and moved forward to City Commission. It did not. As you all know, March 2020 was the start of the pandemic. So this is one of those items that just fell off. There was a lot of activity and work that was going on at the time. I reached out to Jasmine just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. The City Commission did receive the recommendations, but as part of the Sustainability Advisory Board minutes, all the minutes go to Commission, so they would have received it that way, but there wasn't a presentation, a specific presentation in front of Commission. So with that, I will mention that, at least from the staff perspective, this is really good timing because we currently have the process going on with the Land Development Code update. And if you reviewed the solar readiness recommendations, it's really about solar readiness in new construction. The document kind of has 3 sections that I highlight. One is, the requirement of new construction to be solar ready, and there's some components to that within your SAB document. Also adopting the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code. That might be something that you'll want if the Sustainability Advisory Board is interested in revising this document. This is an area where you would want to revise to the latest code since 2018 is already in place. And then the city should seek designation under the Soul Smart program. Kay, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know you were on the board at the time, but I did look into the designation program for Soul Smart. There was an attachment there with some information, but I went to the website. It looks like 2 communities in Kansas have gone through that process. This would not be Land Development Code necessarily item, but really there's a list of all the requirements and like a point system, kind of like a certification on whether you become a Soul Smart community. There are 2 communities in Kansas. Johnson County is one, Shawnee is the other one, that are Soul Smart communities. And at this time, I have shared the information with Jeff Crick, who's our director of the planning department, and he's also kind of looking into that as well as I am for the possibility of the city of Lawrence moving forward with something like that. Other thing I wanted to mention on the solar readiness, you had the vice mayor at your meeting last month, and so he was very interested in what Kay had brought up with solar readiness. So I did kind of meet up with him to just discuss and showed him the list of all the recommendations that this board had put together. He found it very exciting, and again, just with continuation of the work with the Land Development Code, and he also was interested in looking at the Soul Smart. So if this is something that the board would like to pick up and continue to focus on, I just open it up to maybe in looking at it, and some of you who are new to seeing what those recommendations were, have additional updates or something else you'd want to add or revisions to the document.
Kate, did you want to add anything? Kay?
No, but I'm going to view that since SAB already approved that recommendation, that when we start the discussion with the Module 2 for the code development update, that I'm going to make suggestions in that regard because we've already, our board 2 years ago already approved that to go to the cities. So I'm going to take that as direction to make comments on the development code update. Somebody can
Sounds
say
fair.
something different, but
Unless there's a board member, again, if this is your area of expertise, you might have additional recommendations that you would want to add potentially.
yeah, I didn't say that that would be my only recommendation.
If I may add, I mean, I think that there are more ways to actually make us solar ready than what is in there. You know, one of the things that is often overlooked is the structural stability of buildings when considering adding solar to roofs. In most cases, solar ready is the addition of empty conduit brand, which doesn't add a whole lot to construction costs, but it then has that in place so that way when you do go to add solar, it makes it easier because that's already built in and you're not adding it on the outside. I mean, that's where a lot of, like, say, California considers things solar ready. And in working with architects, one of the things that is, again, often overlooked is the structural supports that solar needs.
And of course, Amanda, we would definitely want to get your input because we did not have an expert in solar installation when we were doing that. So obviously,
I know
any of your input.
I actually started attending the SAB meetings. I attended a couple right before the pandemic happened because I knew that the city of Lawrence was talking about, like, the handshake with Evergy, and I do have opinions on all of that.
Okay, good.
But, you know, one of those things definitely is it's a lesser cost, and I think that by most codes is considered to be solar ready. Again, with just the addition of the conduit and perhaps some electrical planning for leaving space for solar add-on. But as solar is starting to become more scrutinized, and with good reason, there's a lot of companies out there that are not doing their due diligence or, you know, give the industry a bad rep. So honestly, to that extent, I welcome the additional, like, steps that they want to go through. But once upon a time, we did not require structural reviews for residential permitting. It was required typically for commercial permits. Now commercial permits are also requiring PE stamping of the electrical and not just structural, but residential in most places are now requiring structural engineering. And so that is just another add that if we're truly wanting to make things solar ready, should be taken into consideration with the construction of new homes. But it's not what is typically seen as solar ready in most jurisdictions and by most codes. So, I mean, I can certainly provide some input, but some of it's kind of maybe shooting for the stars, realizing that we're going to hit the clouds.
It's just that if we're going to address the residential portion of our goals, we've got to move the needle somehow. And we obviously need to make it realistic, whatever we're proposing. So getting your expertise would be really great, Amanda.
Yeah, I'm happy to add. I'm happy to add to that. And I just know, again, how a lot of those things work is you find that compromise in the middle. And I think that where we're currently at, that solar readiness is a lot of that, just that electrical conduit when it comes to the construction, which is a great place to start, but isn't taking into the full consideration of what is required when going into solar, especially as it starts being more regulated, which again, we welcome. We do our due diligence, so we don't really have an issue with that. But it does add maybe cost to the construction of some homes, but most cases, the standard residential home is actually fine with it. But having worked with architects and planning for it, especially construction of new commercial buildings, the spacing of their beams to support that solar is not something that they actually thought of, right? So I'm happy to provide some additional input on that.
Don?
I just want to thank Kay for bringing this to Kathy and bringing that SAB institutional knowledge to the fore. I support putting this on our future agenda items, both the solar ready and the solar recommendations previously approved by SAB to a future agenda. And I'm personally completely fine with Kay representing the already approved recommendations from SAB for now, with the idea that we might hopefully add to it, just to keep the conversation moving. And I'm so glad that Amanda is on the board. I can't remember the gal who was on the board recently.
Deb Ford.
Yes, yeah, that she would have such great input on this. So yeah, maybe we can get her to come to a meeting or something. So I don't know if that needs a motion,
nice.
any of that.
Anybody?
I don't know about adding her, but I do remember that right before the pandemic happened, when we were talking about this, and I was just attending as a public person, that that was one of the things that she and I had talked about, with her being in the architectural background. But then again, once the pandemic hit, it kind of put things on a pause for me.
It seemed, this is Stan Rasmussen.
Get back up.
This is Stan Rasmussen, Chair of the SAB. It seems to me that the solar readiness proposal or approval kind of got lost in the pandemic and was never formally presented to the City Commission. I think, to me, it appears that it would be good for us to revisit that, update it if necessary, and recommend that to the City Commission formally. And if there's kind of consensus on that, then we would try to put that on. It could be our next meeting item, primary agenda item, to look at that. But it seems to me it got lost 3 years ago and probably should be recalled and revisited and brought forward formally. Okay?
I agree. I'm not the expert in that area, so maybe Amanda would take the lead on that, if you would, because I really feel like that we need to, go ahead and propose something, but we want to make it reasonable and relative to what we're doing now. And so I have no problem with totally revisiting the whole issue, and probably at the same time recommend the 2021 IECC instead of the 2018, obviously, which I know that from conversations that is a consideration that the city is already looking at. But I really feel like that now's probably a good time as any to revisit that area. Stan, I agree.
Okay, well, unless there's objection, let's make sure we put that on our agenda for next month. And you can maybe note that in our minutes. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And perhaps if, permittable, I'm happy to kind of maybe work with Kay, since she's kind of had her hands on that already. I'm very maxed out on my bandwidth, but this is definitely one of the reasons and the things that I bring. So I want to give what I can give here, but maybe with some of your experience and assistance.
I might be interested in working with you too on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to find a time to set aside some meetings.
Great.
Sounds like a new subcommittee was formed.
Yeah. The Solar
Yeah,
Readiness
I was-
Subcommittee. Sounds good.
Don?
Hi, Don Hawkins, SAB member. I meant to request, Kathy, could you send out to us the link or a digital copy of the previous recommendation? I keep meaning to update myself on Open Meetings Act rules, but Kathy, can you remind me, like, how many of our board members can meet outside of these meetings related to these topics without crossing the Open Meetings Act threshold?
Currently, your quorum is 6 members, so 5 members in a subcommittee is okay. Once you have 6, you have a quorum, and it needs to be a public meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, is that with the new member?
That is with the revised bylaws that you adopted earlier this year, where you changed the quorum number.
It's based on 10 board members.
Total. Okay, gotcha.
All right, just, sorry, this is taking forever. I've got a lot of stuff here, but really quick, plastic bag communication. There was a question from a board member when the ordinance was officially approved and passed, adopted by the City Commission in second and final reading, why there was no, news release that came out from the city like it did with some other ordinances. The difference between this one is it's not effective immediately. It's the 6-month delay. So there is going to be communications about this. Number one, we're putting communications out in a web page and informing those that are going to be impacted by this new ordinance. But as we get closer to the March 2024 date, there will be news releases that will go out as well. So just understanding of why last month the city didn't push out some news releases on this topic is because it's not effective immediately. This is another area where I can present to the Sustainability Advisory Board and share all the communications pieces and go in the weeds of it if you would like me to. If you don't, then I'm good with just kind of giving short updates on the single-use plastic bag ordinance. Okay.
I have a question on that. There was one commissioner that kept asking us as SAB members why we hadn't done certain things. I think it's important that we get an update on what you're doing, because for some reason or another that commissioner believed that it was our responsibility to do the education portion of the ordinance. So I feel like I think I would like to hear an update on that. I also ask you, Kathy, and how this was going to be implemented by the code enforcement people, and it wasn't really clear. I have looked at New York's complaint form, and there are certain communities around the country that already have easy complaint forms. Seems like that we could develop, not me, but somebody in the city could develop a complaint form that could be easily adjusted so that if somebody had a complaint, they could file a complaint and then it can be worked on. I am assuming that there's not going to be a lot of complaints, but after the 6 months implementation, we should have some expectation that those complaints would be followed through with, even if not immediate, because there were no staff added.
Yeah, and thanks for that suggestion. I will pass it down to planning and have a discussion. As you all know, the additional position for the codes enforcement was not part of the 2024 budget that was approved just recently by our city commission. And I have shared this with some of you, so some of you know this, but we do have 2 FTEs that handle over 7,000 complaints. They can't get to all of those. So adding additional items. This is, by the way, it's enforced based on complaints that come in. This wouldn't be, nobody's going to be going to these stores or restaurants with their takeouts to make sure, nobody from the city staff is going to go out there to audit places or do anything like that. But I just want you to know the reality of the workload of that code enforcement group.
Kathy, sorry, I don't want to get in the weeds on communication about the ordinance from city staff, but there is communication that's going on from the city about this ordinance. There was a newspaper article in the Journal World, and 2 of the commissioners were interviewed for that, the 2 commissioners that didn't want to vote for it. So there's still communication going on, and it makes, in my opinion, it makes the city look like they don't know what they're doing on it. And I'm sure you guys have had more detailed conversations than we have about those things, but I think in a vacuum where the city's not communicating about what's going to happen just because the ordinance isn't coming for 6 months, there's other stuff that's filling it that seems to put the public perception of it that the city isn't doing anything about it.
Okay.
Sorry, that's just the impression I got.
Yeah, we were not interviewed for the article, and it looks like they were picking from comments that were made at a commission meeting. So a reporter was also just going back on some of the comments that some of the commissioners had shared during the meetings, the public meeting. I will say that, I mean, we have got commissioners, and I know there's like a talking points list that has already been distributed because the UDK did reach out for the possibility of an article and so forth. But the webpage and other information should be up by the end of the month is what the communications group had said. So hopefully I'll send you links to that when it comes out. Absolutely, if you see something that you, again, to case point, the Sustainability Advisory Board isn't the work group that's creating or drafting the communications. But if you see something like on the web page that you'd like, that you want to give feedback to the city on, please do, and we can work on, if there's still confusion, if you're hearing the public confused of whether or not they can use single-use bags to pick up dog poop or whatnot, like it seems to be a worry for some, let us know and we can put some communication within what we've got. Yes, Kay?
Okay.
I do have one other question, or actually a statement. I realize that the Office of Inspection gets a number, you said 7,000 for the 2 inspectors. Since this isn't an emergency, I don't understand why it just can't stay on the complaint list and then eventually somebody get to it. To me, they shouldn't drop off. I mean, any of these complaints shouldn't drop off. The Office of Central Inspection has a responsibility to inspect or investigate a complaint. And that's my personal opinion, and that is my opinion as being one that used to be responsible for many inspections in the city of Wichita. They never dropped off on my list. They shouldn't drop off on Lawrence's list.
Any other questions or comments on that? I just have one last item. Sorry. The noxious weed recommendations from the subcommittee group of the Sustainability Advisory Board. There were some conversations about breaking up some of those recommendations. I believe, Ben, you mentioned at the last meeting that you were making a list of things that correlate to the land development code. But one of the things the city was working on is the possibility of updating, again, this kind of feels like low-hanging fruit, but updating the weeds definition within our ordinance. Lots of people brought that up. The subcommittee was hoping that we could, move some of these items that can be changed now versus waiting for the whole package of recommendations to be able to be worked on. So I did have a conversation with our Parks and Rec department Derek, the director there, had mentioned that Parks and Rec was working, or it was on their list to update a few things within that article in our city code. And again, just it feels like every day there's a new fire or something else that just pops up as a priority. So just kind of kept going, still on the list, hasn't dropped off, but, just further out as they're working on the critical, day-to-day activity or the stuff that comes up. So I did ask him again. The idea was, and I was hoping that I'd get some support to just separate out this one piece to the maybe bigger work that they have of updating more of that city code to just kind of get at that weeds definition. And they are okay with just, again, they recognize that it's been a few months now, so they're okay with us moving forward with a recommendation. Again, this would have to go to City Commission for any change to the city code, but that definition of weeds, and it would be removing all the weeds that the city has listed and basically making reference to the Kansas State noxious weed list, which is the way that a lot of entities are going. As you all know, last year, Douglas County, the vegetative maintenance plan was updated. Currently, City of Overland Park is going through some of these updates, more than just the weeds definition, and kind of in line with the Sustainability Advisory Board's recommendation. I actually shared your recommendations document with the Sustainability Director of Overland Park, just as they're going through the process. Currently, their revised draft is not available to the public because they have not yet met with their council or commission, but it will be public here pretty soon on some of their efforts to update that code. So again, we learn from each other. It was actually mentioned at the climate action or climate summit that was happening this past weekend on Saturday. So that's where we are with that.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is to receive some updates from subcommittees. We'll start with Nancy.
Same line for last.
So we met and discussed the current draft of the plan, made some recommendations. We listed 7 and sent them to Jamie Hoffling for her incorporating them or considering them within the plan. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Nancy, I'm sorry, can that be shared with all of the board, whatever was shared? So I don't think I received that, and I thought I was on that subcommittee, but my email box is pretty full, so I might have missed it.
So you want the whole list of things? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think it would be good to share it with the SAB, since it's a subcommittee of the SAB. Just maybe you can send it to Kathy and she can send it out to us.
Okay, yeah, I can send you the list, sure. I thought you wanted me to discuss.
So just so everyone stays up to date and.
Okay, I'll be happy to email it. Kathy, is that something I can do, is to email it to everybody?
No. If you send it to Kathy, Kathy can email it to everyone. But if you send it to everyone, that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. We need to work it through Kathy.
Okay, I'll send it to Kathy to share then.
Thank you. Ben, or Nancy, did you have any more? Looks like no. Okay. Ben, did you have any updates for us on, in addition to what Kathy talked about on noxious weeds, or any updates on food policy?
No, I would say that, Kathy, I want to get together with the subcommittee on the weeds ordinance before you and Derek move forward with that, because I know we did talk about breaking it up, but we need to think carefully about how the best way to do it is. I mean, these are all pieces, but I think there are pieces that we can pull through as well that are low hanging. If it's got to go in front of City Commission to make that kind of change anyways, we might as well include sustainability things besides just the fact that some of the things on it are native species that are on the weeds list. Mm-hmm. So we'll have a meeting and then I'll try and get back to you this month about that.
Okay.
Douglas County Food Policy Council's had a bunch of stuff going on. It's doing all kinds of things all the time. And we have another meeting on Monday night, but I don't have any updates that are directly relevant to our stuff right now.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Kay, did you have any updates for us on the code update steering committee, the development code?
No, we haven't gotten another email yet. I'm certain that we'll probably start getting copious emails in the next couple of weeks, because they're supposed to be out with a more completed draft of Module 1 and then an initial draft for Module 2 with requests for comments. As far as I know, we don't have any meetings scheduled yet, but I'm certain that we will have some soon. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee business? I don't see any hands raised. All right, next item on the agenda is for me to provide an update on the Boards and Commissions Structure Committee. I want to kind of review that. Back in May, the Board and Commission Structure Committee had draft recommendations, and they put those draft recommendations out for public review and public comment during May and June. And at that time, the recommendation for the SAB was for it to remain as a standalone board, advisory board. Then the Boards and Commission Structure Committee, the Board of Boards, I have nicknamed it, met in July to talk about and discuss the public comments that they received and to make their draft final recommendations. I was not able to attend that meeting. I was out of state. And when I got back, I was surprised to see that they had recommended elimination of the SAB. And it really, to me, it was kind of surprising, because I thought I reviewed every written comment that was provided to the city, and I didn't see written comments suggesting getting rid of the SAB. What comments there were about the SAB was that it should remain a separate board. So it kind of surprised me that they suggested eliminating that. There was a draft letter prepared to formalize those recommendations that came out of the July 21st meeting. And that meeting to consider that draft letter was on 21 August. And at that meeting, I questioned why we would not entertain public comment on the SAB proposal, considering it had changed and we had not received any public comment on that proposal. And so the board agreed to take public comment on that. The letter received a nomination, or it was nominated to approve it. It failed for lack of a second. So there's been no action. There's not been an additional meeting scheduled yet for the Board and Commission Structure Committee. So I don't know what's going to happen. I will tell you that I recommended that if they decide to go forward with the letter, that it would need substantial revisions, in my opinion, because it had no rationale for why they were making the recommendations that they were. There was no information for the City Commission, in my opinion. There was no information for the City Commission about what they were, why they were making the recommendations that they did, how that would improve things, and how it would enhance coordination with the Lawrence Strategic Plan. And I suspect that that letter will be redrafted and have to be reconsidered by the full board. I am going to be working with the chair of the board and commission structure committee, Sharon. I'm going to be working with her next, I got to look at my calendar, next Wednesday to start a redraft of that letter. And I'll just tell you honestly, when we get to the point about the SAB, I'm going to say, you got to justify this. Tell me why that recommendation occurred, because I've gone back and reviewed the recording and I just don't see the justification there. So explain it to me, and I'll kind of hold the whole board's feet to their fire on that. That if they're going to go down the route of, hey, we need to do away with the SAB, and this needs to be incorporated into the administration of the city, well, maybe perhaps that's a good thing, but the recommendation should be, we recommend this because we think it's going to enhance environmental sustainability, and we recommend, addition of 3 additional staff that would do X, Y, and Z. I mean, there's just got to be more to it. I feel like this draft letter is short on information and short on rationale, or void of information and rationale. And I really think I'm not going to support any letter that doesn't have that type of information in it. So that's kind of my update from my perspective. And I don't know if anybody has any particular questions for me. Nancy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Stan, I was at that meeting, as you know, in which the letter did not go beyond didn't get a second. So Sharon said that she was going to not pay attention to all of the comments that were made at that meeting, even though there were, I'd say at least maybe 10 comments saying that we should keep the Sustainability Advisory Board. But she chose not to address those because she said we had prior time to have public comments. However, we didn't have prior time for public comments with the recommendation that the board not be recommended to be sustained or kept. So I think you need to emphasize with her that fact as well, that there are many people who were supporting keeping the Sustainability Advisory Board at that meeting. That she chose not to address.
Yeah, I will remind her of that. And just so you know, we have had several additional emails and letters sent to the members of the Board of Boards commenting on that, and some of them specifically pointing out that hey, you had a recommendation of keeping the board in May, and in July you changed that to do away with it, and you've taken no public comment on that aspect. I guess you could say they did take some comment on that last month, but there are others who have pointed that out, and I'll certainly remind her of that when we're together.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Appreciate it.
JT, you have your hand up. I don't see any other board members, so feel free to ask your question or make a comment.
Well, as I may have told you, I've followed the BC SC as closely as a human being can probably follow it, because I'm very concerned about it for a number of reasons. I just thank goodness Stan was there at that meeting and changed the trajectory of the meeting. The Aviation Advisory Board had been dumped in with the MMTC without their knowledge. And they were there to say, wait a minute here. And one of their representatives was turned away. And Craig had to go out in the parking lot and grab him and bring him back in. As a result of that, they withdrew their decision to put the Aviation Advisory Board in with the MMTC. I've worked in aviation a long time, and I know, if not all there is to know about the MMTC, and it's like apples and oranges. So that's one of the things that happened, and it's not unlike what is going on with the dropping of the sub entirely. I just thank goodness Stan was there. I thank you personally, Stan.
Thanks, JT. I really want to focus on the SAB, but I will comment on, just for your benefit, there was no formal decision to change the recommendation about the Aviation Advisory Board. That's something that they'll have to take up in the future. There was just one of the board members who said that they would be inclined to change their opinion about that. But
Stand corrected, and thank you.
I suspect it will change. Maybe, I suspect there'll be more changes. All right.
So Stan, that sounds like besides codifying the recommendations that are there and providing rationales for them, that you think some of the recommendations at least might still change?
I do. I think they probably will. That's just my projection.
Does the Boards and Commissions Structure Committee then, are they going to again have an opportunity for public comment on what the finalized recommendations are going to be, or no?
I will advocate for that, especially if it's changed since what they recommended in May, because that's what they originally took public comment on. And if they make changes after that, I feel they're obligated to take comment on it before they pass it.
If the public comment didn't have the sentiment that, hey, this is a key thing you should change.
Right.
Making strong changes in those recommendations without some sort of public feedback for that seems like, kind of, like you said, moving the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Kay?
And I want to echo, I appreciate Stan, you standing up for us, as well as all the other changes that were made to all the other committees, that the letter was not very well constructed. But I will also add that if you go back to the July meeting, there were some actual misleading statements about the Sustainability Advisory Board that indicated it wasn't necessary to have that because of some of these KPIs that are in different departments. And I contend that the KPIs were not developed very well anyway. And so, you know, and we didn't get staff associated with that. Kathy's the only person there. So there's a number of issues that I take seriously about how that was even characterized in that July meeting for that decision that unfortunately you had to miss. And I know that you and others have also watched that numerous times, that particular meeting. It was totally unfounded even in the meeting that the Sustainability Advisory Board should be cut. It was like, oh, well, let's just cut it.
Yeah. Thank you, Kay.
It's like JT.
JT, one more comment? You're muted.
Some of what you're missing, I think, came from the in-person public meeting at the Carnegie Building. There's nothing there that should have warranted what transpired, but there was some discussion there, mainly by the staff or the supporters of the or members of the body, like Nalbanian. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is I wanted to discuss planning of our next SAB goal-setting session. And I want to preface this by saying we have 3 more meetings left this year, one on 11 October, one scheduled for 8 November, and one scheduled for 13 December. At that 13 December meeting, we will be electing a new chair and a new vice chair. Hopefully Ben will be willing to serve as the chair since he served as vice chair this year, and somebody else will need to volunteer to serve as our vice chair. So if that's something you're interested in, please let us know. Please let Kathy know. We can make sure everybody's aware that you may be interested in that. But with that, I feel and I hope Ben agrees, that we should have another strategic planning session for our SAB. And I wanted to talk about when we should schedule that and what that should look like. And I personally would like to see it. I see your hand, Nancy. I'll call on you. I personally would like to have that happen before the end of the year. I think if we wait till January to have a strategic planning meeting, we're missing out on the year. And I'd like to see us try to do this in November, December at the latest. And so I wanted to get people's input on this and have some discussion about when this should occur. Should it be a one-day event, a two-day event? Can we do like back-to-back afternoons? I feel like last year was all right, but last year was also kind of familiarizing everyone with the strategic plan, looking at it, talking about Ordinance 9744 a little bit. And I think we just kind of dipped our toe in the water last year with our planning. I think this year we could do a little more and be a little more focused. And maybe our focus is on the KPIs, and we set out a goal that, you know, we're going to make suggested revisions to those or something. But I just feel like we can do a little better than we did last year and be a little more focused. And so I wanted us to have a little discussion about that. And Nancy, you can start us out.
So I feel like we haven't really focused on the things that we put out on our agenda for this year. So I don't think that we've really tried to hit what we thought was our strategic plan for this year. So I'm kind of puzzled at why we would develop a new plan when we haven't addressed the plan that we already did last year. I would like to see us just focus on the things that we outlined as goals for this year, rather than starting fresh and starting over and making new goals.
I would agree that I don't think we've done a good job of focusing on our priorities that we identified last year. I think we've given it lip service. I would agree.
I think we need to put them on the agenda each month and address them, discuss them, and move it forward. So I'm a little frustrated that we haven't done that. And so I don't see investing, a long time starting over and doing this again when we haven't addressed what we already said we were going to address.
Well, if you recall, I think our top priority from our goal setting last year was working on implementation of Ordinance 9744, and we had that on the agenda every month for months. And
We didn't have it on this month, we didn't have it on last month.
I know, because we had it on the agenda and we weren't doing anything. We would barely talk about it, we took no action, and it just kind of sat there on the agenda, but we didn't do anything. And
We would run out of time before we could really get deep into it. That's the problem, I think.
so,
Early on the agenda.
and that's another thing we could talk about at a strategic planning meeting is, do we want to change the structure of our meetings? We can look at that as well. So, Dawn, you were the next person with their hand up.
Oh, so you had something to say before, but I also want to respond to that. I think goal setting is something that should be revisited at least annually. I do think that keeping the ongoing goals on the agenda is good, so that we can keep those in mind as we move through the year, and then collectively agree to knock things off the list as we move through. I know it's been kind of a rough patch for a little while for the SAB, and people like Stan's had to step up, and there's been some interruptions and transitions and people coming and going. So it's not surprising that we're a little bit discombobulated. But given that we have new people coming in, I think it would be good to Stan, if you have time to kind of add some of those goals to next month's agenda. But I do think that we should, I don't remember the date of the last one, but I do think that it's good to have a strategic planning meeting. I don't think it necessarily has to be an in-person, big, long, drawn-out thing, but it would be very helpful, in my opinion, to use like some online brainstorming tools where, people, I don't know if you guys have used any of this, but where you kind of, everybody sort of like brainstorms and we put up like literally digital post-its onto a whiteboard, and if Zoom has a whiteboard functionality. So, I feel like we can be pretty effective if we just do something like that. But so in summation, I do agree with Nancy and that our previous goals need to stay on the agenda until they're fully addressed, or the board collectively decides, in a meeting to knock it off. I thought I got disconnected. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing that document, that winter 2022. Yeah, so I am in favor of scheduling strategic planning session for our group with the idea of we're starting with the goals already set, maybe quickly reviewing them, adding maybe, or honing some of those goals.
Okay, I think you had your hand up next, and then we'll go to Amanda.
Thank you, Kay Johnson, SAB board member. So every time that we've had it on the agenda, I have spoken about Ordinance 9744. And to begin with, I've asked for staff, and I know Kathy has said she's working on this, but there is a requirement for an annual update on this ordinance. That has not happened ever since this got passed, to my knowledge. And the other thing that we've got, and Kathy pointed out by putting up our goals, that we are supposed to outline approaches to achieve the goal and help the city of Lawrence develop a plan. When Mayor Larson was on, I asked about the plan. She said, yeah, we need to get a plan. Well, that is another reason SAB should not be eliminated, because this ordinance was adopted 3 years ago. If I'm right, I think. I'm not sure exactly what the date was, but there's not a plan yet. And that needs to happen. And so I'm of the opinion that if we do goal setting, we don't spend a lot of time, sorry, Dawn, but we also put sticky notes on things the last time. But I think we start with leaving this particular goal on our strategic agenda. If we want to add other things, that's one thing, but we haven't completed that. And I'm willing, and our committee has been willing, the climate change committee has been willing to do that. We were hoping to be able to comment on the county plan and then work on that ordinance after the county plan got submitted. It hasn't gotten submitted, so we need to go ahead and look at this ordinance and get past that and start making those recommendations for the plan. And so my opinion is we leave that particular goal there. The implementation of the weed ordinance hadn't happened yet. Education events and celebrations really is a staff thing. I'm not sure that we're involved in that. And we did see the plastic bag ban through, but we still, the pieces of it haven't been finalized. So those are the goals right there.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about what we want to cover at the meeting in the future, but I'd like us to talk about when do we want to have it? How do we want to have it? More about the process. Amanda, you had a comment?
Yeah, so we haven't accomplished everything that we had kind of outlined for ourselves this last year, as mentioned, and I'm sure that it is a good idea to reevaluate where our goals are and where we want to focus our attention, including what we have not fully achieved. I think that in addition to not only addressing the areas that we want to focus our attention, but identifying our ultimate goals for the recommendations that we're going to be giving a city. And while I don't think that our meetings need like a complete restructure, but perhaps as we identify those, schedule those in advance for meetings, so that way we have an idea that in like June, we're going to address this one. In July, we are going to address this one. In August. And if we have things that carry over from the last one, then perhaps we do, but at least setting kind of that deadline for ourselves and that set aside time to talk about it. I find for myself and for my team that if I want something done, I got to put it on the calendar and I got to set that deadline, because there's always continuing stuff and other stuff that is brought up. So at least that'll force our attention to each of the items that we identify that we want to discuss, to be discussed at a meeting instead of maybe getting pushed back or forgotten about.
Great.
Looks like Kay has her hand up again.
Kay, I see your hand up again.
Sorry, I'll just make one more comment. The SAB has historically relied on the subcommittees to produce the information that would go as an action item to the SAB for voting on that, and to provide the research that goes into that. I feel like that we need to probably institute some more additional subcommittees, or assign the subcommittees to, for other additional people to work on these things. These things aren't going to just happen at our meeting. You have to do the work before. So that's what's happened in the past. That's what needs to happen now. That's my opinion.
That's where I would add, if we can schedule them out kind of when we have that session meeting or at the first one, like here's that tentative schedule for the year, that if I know that we are going to be addressing that solar readiness in advance, I'm going to be much more likely to have that time to prepare and know that I'm not coming to this meeting to come up with the ideas, but to help present the ideas and to get, a little more direction on where we can go from there. Because, we all know life, sometimes we can't attend meetings, or things get thrown at us, and where one moment we might have a greater bandwidth than we do for another. So kind of being able to plan a little bit further out ahead, and maybe even kind of assigning that responsibility, like, well, this is really your area. You have our support here. We would love for you to investigate and prepare for this, and we can expect that in May. And of course, if something comes up, maybe it gets pushed back. That is life. But I think for me, at least, that is one of the ways that I've seen myself and my team function best, is when we have kind of that planned out ahead, and we know what kind of amount of time that we have to bring the information to the meeting to make it more.
Yeah, I think having an existing subcommittee or forming a new one to work on draft proposals for our goal-setting session makes a lot of sense, so we're not all coming in there cold, and we have something to start with. Thanks, Kay. How about timing?
Since we're,
Go ahead, Don.
yeah, since we're running out of time, and I don't know if we need to leave any room for open public comment, but Kathy, could you maybe poll us all for, I don't know, I guess after early December, maybe the last week of,
Well, Thanksgiving gets in the way.
My calendar up, but. I'm sorry, I missed what you said, Stan.
We can, Thanksgiving gets in the way of the end of November. I'll propose some dates if everybody likes, and Kathy can send those out.
Just a reminder of the last goal-setting session. It was in discussion for many, many months, and the doodle poll did not, I mean, even though it had 3 months' worth of dates, did not come up with a consensus where all the SAB members could attend. So it ended up being that it got scheduled during your already scheduled monthly meeting is when the goal-setting session occurred, just with a little bit more time than that 7:15 drop-off. But maybe the board now feels like there's a little bit more flexibility, but we had some conversations of, whether you use the weekend potentially, like on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon or so forth. So we can absolutely put dates out there. I know this is a very busy, dedicated group, so just, I don't know if Stan thought a possibility of using one of your meeting times for the goal-setting session, but that could also be an option.
Okay.
I would just ask, and this is because I've been looking at them a lot lately, but could you send around to our board the ordinance that created the SAB with any updates? I think it's 8101, and our last goals, the summary you were just showing of our last goal-setting session, because we have we're going to have a new member, at least one. Dawn wasn't there at the last one, so, where this board comes from and hopefully goes on to, and also what we thought last December in terms of how we're trying to set goals for what we're doing now would be really valuable.
Absolutely, and just really quickly, the City of Lawrence has a boards page. When you go to the home page, let me go over here. I just want to make sure that it's all available. Here's.
And I just want to point out that Ben and I and another member proposed a new board purpose, and then we were told that we had to wait. So I'm telling you that one's old, and we had proposed a new one that had new and improved version of our purpose.
Thanks, Kay. If you saw me kind of moving through the pages from the home boards, I just went to boards and commissions and then picked on Sustainability Advisory Board. All your documents, including the latest prioritized goals, are linked from this page. The ordinance that Ben references on here, your bylaws, ethics policy, advisory board policy, and a few other reports on here, as well as the list of all the members, all of you, and some detailed information on here. So I just wanted to show you.
I suggest you also send the new board policy that we voted on along with the old one, because we did vote on that.
Sure, I'll provide a link to the SAB agenda where that was discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we have a whopping 3 minutes for public comment. I don't know if we have one person in the audience who may want to comment. Doesn't seem.
Did you want to make a public comment?
No, I just wanted to observe because next time I'm participating, and so I wanted to just take this time to kind of learn about how it all.
Are you Catherine?
Yes,
Catherine?
I am.
Oh, well, welcome. You could have participated tonight.
I just think it was actually kind of a nice way to be introduced to the group, was to observe.
All right, well, our new board member has been here spying on us. Observing tonight.
I didn't see the last name, so I didn't know it was you, Katie. Okay.
All right. And JT has interacted already. I don't see anybody else. Kim Kreiner-Ritchie has raised her hand. Kim, go ahead.
Hi there, Kim Kreiner-Ritchie, Douglas County Sustainability Office. I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate this body for the movement of the plastic bag ordinance. I worked in the Sustainability Office those 3 or 4 years ago when members of this committee were doing all that in-depth research, surveying the community to hear what options they wanted and what they'd be willing to give up to see in terms of plastic bag offerings. And that was a lot of work and analysis and research that was done by members of this group. And so I'm sure you all are celebrating what this means for the waste footprint in Lawrence, but I hope also recognizing just the power of your volunteer work, and that even if things don't move quickly, that there's others who will carry the work forward. So just congratulations and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Kim. I think from my observation, Nancy had put in a lot of effort on that, so thank you. Nancy, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I just want to recognize that there was a large rally outside of City Hall yesterday with over 100 people asking for Evergy to close the coal plant. And I think it's something that this board should recognize that the public is very interested in having done. And so I think that's something that we should consider and put it on our agenda in a coming meeting.
Well, please email that to us to remind us that you'd like to have something on the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Stan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, with that, we've hit our 7:15 time frame. I guess I'll move that we adjourn.
You
You want a second? Ben seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
See y'all.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
We'll see you next month.
Oh my gosh, Catherine, you should have told us. It was you.
Well, I got here like